Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's newsletter is going to be getting your center back. Well, I got a really good email from a viewer, and he describes the process that he went through after he broke up with his ex and what he did to get himself recentered and also focus on things that he needed to do in order to make himself the most attractive version of himself that he could be in order to potentially reattract the ex, but also to open himself up to other women that more than likely were already in his life and interested in him, but because he was so hung up on his ex, he just couldn't see it. So it's a really great email because everybody that goes through a breakup in some way, shape, or form has to go through this process as well. So I have a quote that I wrote on this topic, and then we're going to go through his email. And the quote says, in order to move on from a breakup or a dissolution of life circumstances that no longer serve you, you must first accept the reality of your life as it is right now in the present moment. Once you have accepted what is in your life, you can let go of any attachment you may have to the way things were or the people who are no longer in your life. When you no longer have any attachments to your past, then it is easy to look towards the future with positive expectation of new people and better circumstances coming into your life. By having positive expectation and being open to what you want to create in the future, you now will create the necessary space for the right people and circumstances to effortlessly manifest in your life. It's easier said than done, definitely. So he says, hey Corey, I want to take a few minutes and thank you. You and your advice has been a big help in getting my center back after a few tough years. It's a little long, but I promise it will totally be worth it. I joined the Army at 17. Thank you for your service, by the way. And I was far from a ladies' man then. A few years and a couple of deployments later, I left active duty. I was still far from a ladies' man, but that's when I decided to do something about it. I found it hard to relate to people and was socially awkward, especially with women. I did some research, found some forums, and I read a ton of books. These all helped me develop a solid sense of who I was, what I wanted out of life, and what I wanted in a partner. Awesome. Good for you for realizing that you had a knowledge gap that you needed to fill in. And you put yourself through a process, found the answers that you were looking for, and you started getting some good results. He continues on, I was taking classes at a community college and acting a little bit older and a lot wiser than the other guys at school, and I was enjoying a pretty fun social life. Well, when you've been through a few combat tours, you definitely are going to look at the world in a way that most people are not going to be able to look at it. You were wise beyond your years. This is when I met my dream girl, but I was not in the right place for a relationship, and neither was she. I was enjoying my single life way too much, and she was in a relationship. It certainly was very hard for both of us, though, because we did share that crazy electric chemistry that people always talk about, and neither of us forgot that. At that time, I was enlisted in the National Guard and was being deployed right at the end of the semester. Needless to say, the timing was off. During my deployment, and at what for me was particularly low point, deep into it, I got a message on Facebook from her. She had reached out and was trying to keep in touch. We sent emails back and forth for the last few months of the deployment, and all of it appropriate for friends. Then all of a sudden, radio silence. Oh well, shit happens, he says. Fast forward a year later, and she pops up. As it turns out, her ex, the guy she was dating the whole time I knew her, was digging through her phone and found our emails and Facebook messages. Again, I totally respected their relationship, and so did she. He, being a weak, insecure, meathead type, started beating her and being super controlling. That fucking sucks. He's definitely a fucking bitch, whoever that guy is. Real men never hit women. You know exactly the type I'm talking about. I found this out because after a year of saving every dollar she could and planning, she left him. Good for her. She was pursuing me, and at the time I was in a place that was more conducive to a relationship So that summer we started dating. The first 6 months were great. Around Christmas, though, was when things started going sideways. I'll save the explicit details and stick to the highlights. First, I have been diagnosed with PTSD, and that Christmas is when the symptoms started to first appear. Well, I definitely think you need to get help for that, professional help. And one of the biggest things with PTSD, like most vets that struggle who come back from combat tours, is really just talking about things and sharing the emotions, because most guys and girls that come back from those kinds of situations, they don't feel like anybody can understand what they went through. And you know what? Quite frankly, unless somebody's been in combat themselves, it's really hard to relate. But you got to feel it to heal it. With any kind of traumatic event in life, you got to talk about it. And people who are therapists and counselors and do this stuff professionally for a living can be a really big help to helping you deal with and talk about those things in a way that releases all that pressure and that stress so you can deal with the emotions in those experiences. Secondly, her ex found out about me after her and her son stayed at my house for Christmas. These two things were a recipe for disaster. Her ex started playing fuck games with her over the custody of their son. She started acting crazy because she was scared she would lose custody and all that BS. Since I was already emotionally overloaded, I wasn't handling this like a centered, strong, and decisive man would. I became a needy little bitch and scared of losing her. Somehow we made it through this little stretch, but after things with him settled down, she could sense that I had changed. So what did she do? She started testing me, and I failed miserably. Things like this happen to help you grow into the fullness of who you're supposed to be. I look at these kinds of experiences, these aren't random events. You didn't just randomly, haphazardly attract this woman into your life. She came into your life when she came into your life to have this exact experience so you can become a stronger, more better version of yourself. Now, it doesn't mean that you're supposed to be with this woman the rest of your life, but you are supposed to get a certain type of experience so you can become the best version of yourself that you can become. And the beauty of life is, until you overcome whatever weaknesses or flaws or shortcomings that you have, you're going to continue to attract women like this into your life to help you grow and fix that chink in your armor, so to speak. I know she was testing me because she wanted to make sure I wouldn't end up like her ex, but I was so off-center and caught up in my own head, I stopped seeing the forest through the trees. If I had to assign a percentage to who was at fault for the failure of our relationship, it would be 60% me and 40% her. Sounds like you're being pretty honest with yourself and seeing things as they are. And that's the key. To see reality as it is. Not worse than it is or better than it is, but as it really is. She did some things to test me that under no circumstances would be okay. However, had I remained centered, strong, and true to myself, they never would have happened. But at the end of the day, she still did things that were inappropriate and not okay. I don't know what those are because he didn't share them. She left and started seeing other people while I just sat around an emotional wreck. I completely lost sight of everything, and it seemed like every few months as I was starting to rebuild, she would get back in touch with me and I would revert right back to where I was when she left. That's the amazing thing that happens. As bad as things got so bad emotionally that she left to find some peace elsewhere. And the bottom line is 97% of the guys that she's going to encounter don't have a fucking clue. And as time goes by, she starts to think, you know, maybe he wasn't so bad. Maybe I misjudged him. Maybe I was a little impatient. Maybe I reacted too harshly. And then she reaches out. Hopefully, you're different at that point, but she reaches out. And obviously, in this particular case, you hadn't changed. You hadn't done anything differently. And then you just reconfirmed to her that she made the right decision by ditching you in the first place. He says, this went on for almost a year. Back in October is when I first ran into you in your work. I watched a few videos, signed up for your newsletter, and I read your book. It was exactly what I needed. When I read your book, things that she had said about what had drawn her to me and what you were saying were completely congruent. Your book and videos have brought back a lot of things that I had learned years ago and even taught me some new things. I wish I had found your stuff when things had first started to go sideways. You know what? I showed up in your life exactly right on time when you were ready. As the old saying goes, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, obviously at some point you realized you needed some help. You started looking for help, and then magically I popped up in Google search or on YouTube. And whatever I was saying at the time resonated with what you needed to hear. He says, it would have been a great reminder to center myself first and deal with the things from that centered mindset. Well, the way I look at things is what happened, and it couldn't have happened any other way. A lot of it, and it's like Steve Jobs said in his biography, you really can't see that until later on in life when you're looking back. You can't connect the dots going forward in your life. In other words, you can't connect the dots when a situation like this is coming up and see the significance and the importance of why you had this experience with this woman. It's only 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now when you're looking back, you go, oh my God, she was exactly what I needed to prepare me for that next chapter, or prepare me for so-and-so who I met next. A lot of what happened could have been avoided. However, the real lesson is that I should always be going back and rereading and practicing what you teach, no matter what my relationship status is. On Veterans Day, she reached out again. I was armed with the right mindset, as well as some new knowledge, and we exchanged a few texts. Then I said, hey, it's been great chatting with you, but we should save the catching up for when we meet up. When are you free to get together? Isn't it great whenever I start shooting a movie, you hear the fucking sirens show up? It's like I haven't heard any sirens for hours, but yet I sit down to shoot a video and boom, they pop up. Maybe that's trying to teach me something about life. Maybe. I'll have to think about that one. She told me she would check her work schedule and let me know. I never heard from her. I didn't contact her again. Then on Thanksgiving, she sent me a text saying, Happy Thanksgiving. I asked her to meet up, and she replied with, I can't. So I gave her the old, hey, it's great hearing from you. Get in touch if you change your mind. Then I got a text on Christmas Eve from her saying, hey, stranger, blah, blah, blah. My family does their gift exchange on Christmas Eve, and I was busy with that, so I ignored the text. At 12:25 a.m. Christmas Day, I got Merry Christmas. Now, I'll be honest, I wasn't feeling completely centered at that moment and completely tempted to have an emotional vomit session. So I decided that I should wait until I was more centered to respond. Isn't that amazing, the shift that he went through? He said, you know what? I might come completely unglued, so I'm going to do nothing. I did a video, Sometimes Less Really Is More, I think a couple years ago, where I talk about this. And it's good. He recognized, hey, I'm not in the right place to respond, so I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to wait. Because at the end of the day, she reached out on 2 separate occasions prior to that. He tried to make a date, and she's like, oh, I can't. What's she doing? She's stirring the pot. Hey, is he still interested or not? Is he still a potential backup in case things don't work out with whoever happened to be in her life at the time? That's the only reason why a woman reaches out, and then you ask her to get together, and she says, I can't. It's because she's looking to line up a potential replacement or a backup. And that's why after 2 times of asking them to get together, you don't ask anymore. The day after Christmas, I sent her a text with Merry Christmas. I hope Johnny had a good Christmas. Johnny obviously being her son. She asked how my Christmas was, and I said it was busy because I had to do the holiday circuit. Mom's, dad's, aunt, and uncle's houses. She remembered doing it with me in the past, and she started making some other small talk. And that's when I texted her and said, hey, I'm glad he had a good Christmas. I'm just going to come out and say what I needed to say. I'm happy and really enjoyed doing me right now. And if you're not looking to hang out and have fun, I'm not sure how much we have to talk about. If you change your mind, feel free to get in touch with me. I haven't heard from her since. So he basically said, I'm really not interested in this bullshit, mindless, senseless chit-chat. I wouldn't have said what he said here. What I would have said was, hey, well, it was great hearing from you for the holidays. Have a Merry Christmas. I got to run. Keep in touch. That's what I would have said to her. I wouldn't have said what you said, but at the end of the day, what's done is done. Because the idea is you want her to say, hey, we should get together. Because the only way at this point you're going to get together with her is if she brings it up. Because you've already asked her twice, and she said no to both times, even though she's the one reaching out to you. He says, that moment I sent that text was a tipping point. I lost my connection to an outcome. If I hear from her, great. If I don't, oh well. I'm back to setting my terms for relationships, and that's a good starting point. That's amazing. It's like in that moment, he takes his power back. It's like a big weight is off of me. The funny thing about letting go was, as soon as I was okay with it, and I took those blinders off, there were two great women who had been putting themselves in my orbit for quite some time, and I could finally see them. Because he's all focused and fixated. I got to get my ex back. I got to get my ex back. But meanwhile, he's got these two women going, hey, hi, how are you? Notice me? Playing with their hair. Trying to get his attention, but because he's so fixated on the ex, he can't even see them. But they were right there all along. This is what happens when you're attached to something, you haven't let it go, you can't see what's right in front of you. He says, I'm dating both of them right now, and I've been super upfront that a relationship isn't a priority for me because I still have a lot of work to do to get back to a centered mind. However, for the time being, I'm enjoying their company and setting my terms. That's awesome. You're being honest, you're authentic, you're saying, hey, I'm not looking for a relationship, I'm just dating and having a good time. Because there's a possibility when you say it to him, she might go, you know what, I'm looking for something more exclusive and I want to only go out with a guy who's only going out with me. So he's putting it right out there. He's being honest and he's speaking his truth. And you know what? They're both going along with it. Amazing how that works. So thank you, Corey, for helping me get back to a center place where I can begin to rebuild myself in a way that supports my emotional and mental health. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing that success story of what you're doing and what you're focusing on and how once you let go of that attachment to the ex, you're like, oh, wow, there's these two great girls that want to go out with me. Well, let me take advantage of that. So if you'd like to get my help personally, the quickest way is to book a paid phone, Skype, or email coaching session. You can choose any of those options by going to my website, clicking the products tab at the top of your screen, and follow the instructions for booking whichever option works best for you. And I will talk to you soon.